Hey, what's up, guys? Dan here from Spilling the Tea, a Pekoe podcast. I want to thank you again for joining us. Today, I was joined by Paul Fitzpatrick over at HomeGroup Realty. We had an awesome conversation. We talked a little bit about his hero's journey, how he got here, and also jump into the market, his predictions, his advice for buyers, sellers, and some pitfalls to avoid. And then we just kind of got into some other stuff too. So I hope you enjoy it, you like it. Check out Paul and HomeGroup Realty. I'll link below. And catch you on the next one. Enjoy it. Hey guys, welcome to Spilling the Tea, a podcast brought to you by Pekoe Mortgages. I'm your host, Dan Johannes, and in this series, we'll be interviewing some really interesting entrepreneurs, real estate professionals, and really anyone that's got a story that I think is worth sharing with you, the viewers. So sit back, relax. I hope you enjoy it, and please comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Spilling the Tea. I'm your host, Dan Johannes from Pekoe Mortgages, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Paul Fitzpatrick. Paul is a 40-plus year resident of Guelph, having graduated from the University of Guelph with a degree in management economics. Paul started his real estate career back in 1988, and in 2011, he opened his own brokerage, so that's HomeGroup Realty, with a team of only 4 realtors. And since then, he has grown it to a dynamic independent brokerage of over 50 plus seasoned realtors. So Paul, welcome to the show. I appreciate you stopping by here. So I guess the first question here is, it seems like from the get-go, you pretty much knew right out of university what you wanted to do and to get into real estate. So maybe you can kind of speak a little bit on that journey, what got you interested, because I graduated from the same program at Guelph, and I think real estate was probably the furthest thing from what I found myself getting into. So I just want to kind of get an idea of what drew you towards real estate.
Great. Well, thanks, Dan, and thank you for having me on. And I wish I could say that I was so narrow focused on real estate from the get-go. And it was funny because I was chatting with a friend of mine today at breakfast over this. And I initially started out at Guelph doing computer programming. And as much as I am a geek, I realized very quickly I was not cut out to be coding. Right. And switched over to the management economics program because I had visions of being the next Michael J. Keaton and being on the 30th floor of the TD Center downtown Toronto. What the reality of that was having graduated, spending 2 years doing retail banking in Toronto for National Trust, and quickly realizing that I did want to be in business for myself. I just had to figure out, what business could that be that didn't require a boatload of capital? Right. And it turns out that would be real estate. So that led me back to Guelph, starting out because I didn't want to be a minnow in a massive ocean of realtors in the GTA market. Right. And I was very familiar with Guelph, having lived there for so many years and I knew people that I thought that was the logical and reasonable spot to start out in real estate. And, started out with a small brokerage, Donnelly Real Estate, moved to Realty World, which then became Royal LePage. And 2011, felt I needed some additional challenges and thought I can open my own brokerage. Wow. Here we are going on our 11th year. So always looking to, where are the best practices? What are the next best things we can introduce to our clients? So that's the quick abbreviated version.
That's amazing. That's, I kind of, I can sympathize with the whole Toronto thing because I lived in Toronto for a vast majority of my adult life too. And it can be a little, like you said, small fish in a big pond, and moving out to Kitchener-Waterloo, it's felt like it's a better fit. And I mean, it's pretty fantastic that you're able to kind of like, pick an industry that, and I'd imagine back in, like, I wasn't around in the industry back in that time, but we were dealing with interest rates that were just kind of astronomical, right? They were right through the roof. I can imagine now with a lot of buyers that are questioning now, well, what do I do? Do I stay on the sidelines? Is this an opportunity to jump in the market? There's a lot to navigate there as a real estate agent. But I want to also speak a little bit on the, as a broker owner. You've got a whole bunch of other challenges that typically I would imagine other realtors don't necessarily have to deal with. How did you so quickly grow in 10 years, basically from having 4 realtors on board to 50 plus agents? And then was that a task in itself to just manage? And I guess it also speaks too on, I've looked up a lot of your Google reviews just for the team as well too. And people love HomeGroup Realty and what they do and what they represent. So that speaks to, I guess, sort of the culture there. Maybe you can touch a little bit on that.
Well, and yeah, that's been a big thing for us over the years, that when we opened up, we didn't want to mimic what all the other bigger brokerages were doing, right. Making it all about a head count and how many people can we collect desk fees from and that sort of thing. So that's kind of the inside thing. But the big thing for us was we were a small group of realtors that we had done a lot of business together, and we all worked in a similar manner, in that we were very client-centric and relationship-based versus being transactionally based. Right. So, we weren't there like, oh, you're my next deal, and then there's my next deal. It was more, I want to build a relationship, right. Because that meant that if you were happy with what I did and how we delivered, you were more than likely to refer us and refer other business to us and keep coming back to us. So the bulk of my business over the years that I developed has always been on a repeat and referral basis. So we would look after the clients. You didn't see me doing a ton of advertising all over the place. It was all by word of mouth, and so that's how we built the basics with the brokerage. So we did different things, like our signs are all custom for each property. We believe that the signs should advertise the actual property that we've got listed for sale, and it shouldn't just be a marketing piece for the agent. Right. So every sign has like a tweet, 160 character description on the property.
I love that.
And so it's little things like that we've done over the years that help distinguish us and help us stand out from the crowd. And it's just an emphasis on making sure that we do the right thing for the client, and the client comes first. So that's helped us attract like-minded people. And the fact that, we've been able to grow our brand and become we're number 4 in the marketplace right now.
Well, Guelph's not small anymore either, right? I remember back in the day, it was a lot smaller of a town than it is now.
And with the way the markets between Guelph, Kitchener, and Cambridge and Waterloo have all been, we all share the same database now. It's made for some exciting times on how we work with our clients and service the business.
Yeah, and I think that speaks volumes, because now more than ever, it's so important to have a relationship. Not only, and I think having a solid relationship with your agents as well too, right? That so you have a strong relationship there, and then you also nurture the relationships with every client that walks through the door. That speaks volumes on how you grow and foster a healthy work environment. So I would say that probably you could attribute some of that success in the brokerage to just your ethos and how you conduct your business there. I love that idea though of going ahead and putting unique signs for every property. That makes a lot of sense. That's sort of your calling card for that property, right. And to have it independent or unique for each property is fantastic. Mm-hmm. So how would you do that for I guess maybe not detached or semi-detached homes, but something like a condominium? Like, what do you do that's a little bit different than maybe some of the other brokerages out there when you're going to list a property like that?
Well, on some of those, we're not going to be able to put the sign out. So we end up doing a lot more online marketing, right. And that's a crowded space now. But again, it's more how do we make it about the property and the client that we're representing than about us as individuals or us as the brokerage.
That's a good point.
We've coached our agents a lot on networking with their fellow agents throughout the board. So this is a really funny industry in the sense that we're competitors, but at the same time, our industry relies on, and the efficiency of the market relies on us being cooperative and collaborative.
Yeah, you need each other for sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of, especially with COVID, a lot of the new people in the market, the agents, haven't quite understood what that's all about. So again, we're trying to be a little retro in terms of coaching that to our agents, get in front of people as opposed to just relying on the technology. And let's network with your colleagues within the industry. Let them know what you're working on. Let them know what you need, instead of being, very closed-fisted with your information. So we're just constantly trying different things, and we talk about it in our team meetings all the time, like what's working, what doesn't work, what gets attention of people.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I think in this type of, like, we're in complementary industries here, but in real estate as a whole, it's so important to just try to, pivot and see what works, what doesn't work. Like, I was someone that was completely against getting on TikTok, and I've had friends and other colleagues from different brokerages, and same sort of thing. We still talk, we're still a community. And some people have had great success on it. I was like, my wife loves TikTok, and I'm like, maybe I won't. I'll give it a shot. So I got on it, and it became sort of, another tool that you can help to find your niche and find an audience in. So, it's just a matter of kind of figuring out what works. And I think that's speaking to sort of like the COVID, the last couple of years has definitely been not a unique circumstance in the industry, and everyone's had to kind of pivot. What have you guys done at your brokerage in the last couple of years to really navigate, I guess what we call the new norm, not only with expectations with buyers and sellers, but then also with your agents?
Well, and that's a great question, because it's forced us to very quickly adapt to a number of different things. So one, we were quick to jump on the technology like this,
right? Yeah.
And start being in front of clients electronically, which prior to that, the real estate industry was really far behind on the tech and on being efficient in that sense. So we were quick to jump on things like Zoom and other ways of getting in front of people electronically. We were very close to being completely paperless prior to COVID, but that made us very quickly pivot to offers, everything being done electronically and being in front of people that way. So we were quick to do that, and it also forced our agents to become a little better at qualifying people. So if we were a lot of the times, and I would call them Pop-Tart agents. So I would get a call on a sign or a listing in the paper or on the internet, and it's like, oh, I like that property. Can I go see it? And we wouldn't really sort of dig in and go, okay, so what is it about this property that attracts you? What is it? You
wouldn't put those qualifiers out there for them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so they'd be, yep, I'm on my way.
Right.
And then get there and find out, oh, well, I'm already working with an agent, or yeah, I really do want this other type of property. And now you've just wasted a lot of people's time, including the sellers, the buyers, yourself. So we've gotten a lot better at sort of starting to build that relationship up front and fully understanding what is it you're looking for, because COVID was forcing us to do that. We were limited in terms of showings. We were limited in terms of how many people we could bring through and how long we could. So necessity was, I got to find out, Dan, are you qualified? Have you been pre-approved for this kind of price point? Are you sure this is, like, you've driven the neighborhood, you want this neighborhood, you want this style of home, you've looked at the floor plans and all the photos and the videos that we've uploaded on this listing. And if all those boxes are checked, then we're going, yeah, we can set that up for you.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic, because by doing that, you're also saving, maybe subconsciously, for a lot of the buyers and sellers. They don't realize that this takes a lot of time. And, you know, if someone doesn't know exactly, they like a house, but they don't know exactly what they like about the house or the community, by asking these questions and qualifying them up front, you're actually getting a better understanding, really, of what they want and what they need, which is, yeah, it's fantastic that that you've kind of been able to do that. We've noticed the same thing with the mortgage process, right? Like, I think a lot of branches were struggling because folks would like to come in, and they'll like that personal touch and to have the paperwork and to sign it. But then you got to a point where people were forced; they couldn't go in and see their banker, right? So they had to go the electronic, digitally. Let's meet over Zoom. Let's discuss things virtually, and everything can be done from home. So then all of a sudden it was like, wow, there was the convenience factor that we didn't know we could do. And, you know, and they just kind of rolled with it. So do you see this as something that post-COVID too, that you guys are going to continue with the qualifying questions and so forth as we get into normalcy again?
I hope so, and that would be my expectations, because partly we've helped condition the consumers out there to expect that as a better and a higher level of service.
Right.
And now that, and you know, things have opened up and we're back to doing public open houses, because there was a lot of debate about whether public open houses would just be done, gone, because they've been a great source of lead generation, business opportunities for realtors.
Right.
And it's been, for the most part, a good source of entertainment for a lot of people that are interested in real estate. And, you know, a small percentage, and when we look at all the numbers over the years, it's less than 5% of all buyers come from an open house.
Oh, wow.
So it's a very inefficient way to market a home. And I can recall many conversations, you know, in those days when I would take a listing and a client would say, now, what about open houses? And I had a big enough book of business and enough clients that I would say, I don't need, you know, here's what an open house really is. It's a lead generation tool for a realtor.
Right.
And I really don't need to do them, but if you really want them, I have colleagues that are very good at working open houses, and they'd love to have it. And they go, no, I'm glad I don't need to have one. You know, yes, do the open house for the agents to preview it, but public open houses, if they were given the option, a lot of clients said, no, not interested.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, you know, that I think that there's a novelty factor now that, hey, open houses are allowed again. So let's get out, let's go do something. And that's fine. You know, and I'm hoping that the coaching and training that our agents have had will allow them to engage with the public when they go through these open houses in a much more professional manner.
Right. Yeah.
Is the term I'm going to use.
Right. No, that's a good point. I had no idea that only 5% had, you know, gone through an open house, but that makes sense, because I think back on it too. And, you know, sometimes my wife and I, if someone's doing an open house down the street, hey, let's go check it out. We got some time, you know, and yeah, I mean, we're not really qualified. We're not in the market. So that makes a lot of sense. And speaking of market, let's talk a little bit about what's going on, because I know there's a lot of questions that at least we're fielding, and I'm sure you're getting it too, from everything from, you know, rising interest rates that are kind of keeping people on the sidelines, to a tide shifting where maybe we're not seeing the same sort of demand, and there's a little bit more supply. So, like, what's going on in your world, Paul? Like,
well, and that's you know, fabulous point to start on, that it feels like the market has slowed down tremendously. The reality of it is we've just come from warp speed down to, you know, normal Mach 1 speed. And I've been looking at some stats, and, you know, right now, as much as prices have come off somewhat from the peak in January and February, we're still almost 15% above the median price of May of 2020 or 2021.
Wow.
So, you know, prices have come down a little bit. The high water mark is, you know, that's come and gone, but there's still we're still well above where the market has been for the last number of years. The overall sales, when I look at that, we're down 32% in terms of the total sales from last year. But again, when I look out, extrapolate back to 2009, we're still running very close to what the average number of sales would be for the month of May and those other months.
Yeah, as an average, yeah.
Again, the peak for us was last March. There was 360 homes sold in the city of Guelph. March of this year, it was, quickly pull it up, 257. So down considerably.
Yeah.
But when I run across the graph, those March levels from this year all match up pretty closely to a traditional March that we've had in the previous years.
Right. So once we kind of take into consideration sort of that yield curve there, you can see that we're not too far off. Okay.
Yeah. And I think part of it is, there's a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace where people are watching interest rates go up. And this is an interesting conversation because we chatted about this at our last team meeting that, the way the interest rates have gone up in the last couple of months, the price decreases, it's still been more expensive for that to buy that property with the higher interest rate than the price decreases have brought the overall cost of ownership down.
Right.
So people that are thinking, well, I'm going to wait for prices to keep dropping, I think the pace of interest rate increases is going to
negate any sort of like savings there. Yeah.
Because
that's a really good point.
We look at it now that it's much like the way we buy cars. We don't look at the overall price. We look at what's my monthly cost going to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that $500,000 mortgage, has gone up by what, $500 a month now in the last 3 months, something like that.
Yeah. It's definitely gone up. And, just on average, like if we look back from December, the bond yields, the commercial bond yields, and even the 5-year bond yields that drive the residential market on fixed rates, it's steadily been increasing to a point where, we're looking at 4.5% is a good rate now on a 5-year, which is 2% higher than what we were seeing just a little while ago. So it's definitely made things a lot more expensive for that same amount. Not only that, but the stress test, right? So everyone's got to qualify in that mortgage qualifying rate. So last year it was set at 5.25%. So even though you could get like a 2% mortgage back then, you still had to qualify in a 5.25 or the contract rate plus 2%. So now that we're getting into a realm where interest rates are over 3.25%, it's actually forcing borrowers to qualify at greater than 5.25%. So let's say they got a 4.5% interest rate. Well, we're qualifying you on a 6.5% interest rate. So it's forcing people to do variable rate mortgages as well to kind of keep their affordability in check. I got a question for you, Paul. So if I'm thinking of listing my house, right, in this type of market, and I'm kind of used to a lot of the articles that have come out in the last couple of years where things are going for astronomical amounts over asking. What is the strategy in this market? If I'm going to list a house, should I be listing it at sort of like a teaser price that can drive up that value, or is it completely off the mark, or what would you recommend?
Well, and that's Dan, that's a great question because it depends. So there's a lot of variables there. If I'm looking at big picture, I would say that strategy of teaser list price, hold off for a week and accept offers has become a very risky strategy. Mm-hmm. We're seeing many people that are still using that strategy. Offer night comes, there's nobody at the door, or there's maybe one offer at the door. The property gets taken off the market, and then a day later, it shows up back on at a much higher price or a more realistic price.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing is now it's let's look at the price point. Let's look at the what's the competition, Am I in a real sweet spot that's going to be attractive to entry-level buyers or that coveted move-up buyer? And if I've got some unique features and the house shows really, really well, I may still try that tactic, but I'm going to still price it closer to to what we expected to sell.
Right. That makes sense.
Some of the higher end properties or properties that, and there was a great article a month ago that was featured where, this house was sold that, the ceiling was falling in, the place was full of mold, and it still attracted multiple offers. That market has disappeared right now. If that house isn't priced right to reflect its current condition, people are just ignoring it.
Yeah,
because they've now got a lot more choice in the marketplace, right? I think our inventory, our month's supply is still low, but it's more than doubled up. 3 months ago, we had maybe 2 weeks supply. Right now, we're sitting at a month and a half of supply of listings, which means it would take, 45 days. If nothing else was listed today, it would take 45 days to clear out all the available homes.
Right.
So 3 months ago, we could have done that in 2 weeks. A normal market, a balanced market, there'd be 4 to 5 months worth of inventory.
Right. So we're still not there.
No, not even close.
Yeah.
So this is where the conversations we're having with our clients, sellers in particular, is that, inventory levels are building, but the prices we don't expect to rebound back to where they were. They're going to slowly normalize and slide down.
Right.
And for buyers, there's the conditions are still good. You've got less competition amongst other buyers. You've got more houses to look at, and you don't have to make an instant decision. So we're now actually seeing conditional offers. And the really funny thing is, there's a lot of new agents in the industry and in our brokerage, and they're going, I've never seen a conditional offer on sale of property.
Wow.
Right? Home inspectors are actually getting busy again.
Yeah.
So,
I've had friends that were home inspectors that had to kind of leave the market because there just wasn't enough business, right, to keep them going. So, yeah.
And so what hasn't happened yet is the media, and I don't want to paint them as the bad guy, but, headlines are what sells things.
Right.
They haven't caught up to where the market is, in the sense that, it's normalized. It's still very healthy. So we're not in a free fall. We're not expecting, fire sale prices anytime soon at all, because demand is still strong.
Right.
It's just becoming very much a normal market, normal market conditions. And that means the average days on market is probably going to hit 30, 45 days. For us, somebody been in the business so long that the average sales price to list price ratio would have been around 90%. So, folks, we're going to list it 500. You can expect to sell somewhere between 450 and 475, somewhere, whereas in the last couple of years, it was always, we'll list at 5 and you can expect 6. That just doesn't happen anymore, unless the property is very unique and really, really attractive.
Right. That's not sort of the norm. And yeah, I remember that too. It's funny because I think I struck a nerve on TikTok last night. I posted a video, and it was sort of like what you can buy across Ontario with only 15,000 down. And obviously that's not a lot to put down on a property, but I found some unique properties, and wow, did it ever ignite. And it's good because it got people talking, but a lot of folks are like, no, this is going to go 200,000-300,000 over asking. And I think because that was the new norm for so long, people just kind of got used to saying, hey, you know what? Yeah, we got to go in hard on this. And I'm glad you spoke of conditions on an offer, because as in our line of work, we recommend everyone, and it's up to the individual buyer on whether or not they go ahead and do that. But really, those conditions are put into the contract to protect you in the event that something is found on the house, or it comes in below value, or whatever it is, right? So we're dealing with some right now that had gone in firm back in February, and appraisals are coming in very light, and going in firm, right? So it becomes a little bit of a challenge at that point, because you don't have those provisions in the contract that kind of gives you a little bit of a buffer or an out in the event that you can't get financing, or something comes up, you can't get insurance, whatever it is, right? So yeah, I think we're definitely gonna see a little bit more, I guess, less emotional buying, and
Yes.
more of a, rational. Let's really consider what we're
Yeah.
spending our money
And,
on.
and as realtors, I can tell you, we weren't a great fan of the market we've just come through.
Oh, it must have been tough for you guys.
It
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, the buyers and, probably had bore the brunt of it. But when I'm having to give somebody advice, like, yeah, go in $150,000 over list and take out all your conditions because that's the only way you're going to be competitive.
Right.
I'm taking on a lot of risk and reputational risk that I'm advising my clients the correct way. So it brings a lot of benefit back to our clients, where we can say, no, we're going to make it conditional. We're going to do our due diligence. We're going to make sure the house is in good shape, that, the mortgage is going to be there for you when you need it, and we can get insurance. And it just makes the process that much more enjoyable. So, but you touched on an interesting topic with the appraisals. And again, I can imagine that's a struggle for you guys who are doing the originating and the underwriting, having those kind of conversations with clients when
It's definitely tough. Like, I've got one, a client who had purchased, we do a lot of stuff in downtown Toronto as well too. And, the expectation back in January, February was going hard on an offer, and definitely above asking. So, there's some where I've seen upwards of 800,000 over asking on properties. And now it's a matter of, okay, we have to justify this, this price point. And when the appraisers come back, I feel for them too, because they're like, I spoke to an appraiser yesterday, and he said, look, I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm told by the bank, go in, assess the value of it. And he's like, I have to be able to justify the value on a property. And just because someone bought it for that much doesn't mean that that's what the market value is on it. So it becomes, you really have to stick handle it, and make sure that you're setting up expectations for everyone on, okay, just because we got a pre-approval, or the bank's like, sure, we're happy with you as a borrower, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be happy with the value you put on that property, or the offer you put on. And it's definitely, having those conversations are difficult after the fact. And I definitely feel for appraisers, because they're kind of thrown in the middle of it too, as the bad guy. And they're like, look, we're just kind of trying to do our job here the best that we can. So yeah, it's a tricky one, because we're right in the middle, right, as the tide's turning. Yeah. And I think as more data comes on board, because that was sort of the tricky thing at the beginning of the pandemic, when everything sort of shot up, appraisers were left. On the other hand, they were like, well, we don't have enough comparables to actually say, hey, this is worth what you guys offered. So there was a point where, the appraisals were coming in low, just because there wasn't enough comparable sales data there to support that price. But then things equalize, and now we're going the opposite direction. So interesting time, that's for sure. And I would ask, I guess, too, for you, Paul. So if you've got a buyer that's kind of considering entering the market, and they're on the sidelines right now, like, what's your recommendation for someone there? Should they wait and see? Should they pull the trigger? And then also, what's the process, I guess, if they were onboarding with you or your brokerage? Like, what do you guys go through as far as qualifying a buyer?
Great. Well, let me start with that when we have an introductory consultation with clients, we're going in to discover, what's the lifestyle you're looking for. not only, yeah, tell me about the house you want, and tell me about, the things that you must have in this next property. And then, your would be nice to have list. It's like, what's your timeline? How long do you see yourself here?
I love that,
Because if
because you are building that relationship, right? You're sitting
right,
down, you're saying, I want to know you as a person, your
yeah.
your likes, your wants, your need. That's great, because it's you're almost matchmaking at that point, right?
Well, at the end of the day, that's what it is, because as our market normalizes, it goes back to, like, if you buy a house today, by the time you pay commissions and legal fees and appraisal fees and all those fees, if you have to turn around and sell it in a year, well, we're not going to see appreciation in the market enough to cover those expenses. So,
Right.
we're trying to dig in and go, what's the plan here? Because if you're going to be here 5 years, you're going to be relatively safe in terms of being ready to move up or move out or do something else. But if you're thinking right now in this market that, no, you know what, I'm going to get into this now, and because the market's going to go up by another 10 or 15% next year, then I can afford to take that next step. We're going to educate them on what's going on.
Mm.
So then we'll talk about, okay, let's do an education trip. So we'll actually take them out and say, here, you guys pick out 2 properties that appeal to you. And then we're going to pick out some that will give you a clearer picture of what the neighborhood is or what that market is like.
Right.
And we're going to go out and see some of those. So you get a feel for, here's what's available, and here's what this kind of property sells for. Here's what they, varying degrees of condition look like. So that way, when we're actually out looking at properties and we're ready to put an offer together, we've already set the expectation level.
Right.
They know they've been educated. What's the market doing? We're not having to deal with the multiple offers again. So now they've been educated that, there may be some room to negotiate now.
Mm.
We don't have to make a decision 15 minutes after we've seen the house.
Right.
So that's the process we're going through. And then we're talking about, okay, now let's talk about financing. And, do you have an established relationship with your bank or a mortgage broker? If not, then let's get you in front of somebody that's going to go through this process with you and make sure that financially you're all set to go with this.
Right. Right.
We would, introduce them to you and or of course other people.
Yeah.
And then from there, we get the searches going, we get them out, and that's, get that process going. And then now we're dusting off our address books, because we need to reintroduce ourselves to our inspectors and to our insurance agents and all those people on our teams that we would normally go to. So that's the process. There's a lot of people, both buyers and sellers, sitting on the sidelines right now.
Mm.
And my approach on this would be, that's fine sitting on the sidelines if you've got time on your hands or you're not, motivated to do something sooner than later.
Right.
But if you're ready to buy and you've got your budget lined up, if you're going to try to time the market and think that the market's going to come down another 10% or 5%, what are interest rates going to do in the interim?
Right.
So there's really not going to be an advantage to necessarily waiting. And again, if you're here for 5 years, in the long term, that 5-year span, the market is still going to go up. Because the interesting thing I always share with clients is, we've got data that goes back, 20, 30 years. And yes, there are months and years in the market where it goes up, considerably above average. There have been times, like 1992, where there was a 25% drop in the market. And it took a few years to get back. But the trend line is, you're going to see, at least in the Guelph market, consistent, 4 to 6% annual growth in the value of your home.
Right.
So
and so if you're sitting on the sidelines for 5 years, I mean, you've just kind of given up that opportunity to get in on that, long-term growth. Yeah.
And so we'll explain it that way. And hopefully that makes sense. And it takes some of the fear that people have about waiting, not certain about where the market's going.
Yeah, I think they call that FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And I think, you spoke volumes on that, and just being able to grow that relationship and get comfortable with whether it's a buyer or seller in front of you. So, the more you can educate them on what's going on from a professional standpoint and what you've seen over the years, and just really, they're able to lean in on your experience. I mean, I think that just kind of eliminates a lot of the concern there. And yeah, it's so important to have those tools and skill set to do that. Um, Anyway, Paul, I really want to thank you for joining us today. I know you're a busy guy, but I'm sure that our audience appreciates listening to you and providing that insight on not only your brokerage and your story, but recommendations on what we should do in this changing market. So thank you again for joining us, Paul.
Dan, my pleasure, and I'm honored to have been on your show. Thank you very much.
No problem. Let's do it again. It was fun.
Absolutely.
Okay, sounds good. Bye-bye.